Oh,
Nice.
Christmas is good.
Remember the bell.
Good.
Welcome everybody to the Council of Fort Lauderdale Civic Association's May meetings. And what are you looking at me for? Anyway, I'm glad everybody's here. And as always, we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. You can stand it right here. And those on Zoom, feel free to join. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Right.
Okay.
The agenda will probably be put, at least keep one on Zoom.
No.
There's several.
Okay, oh, I see, we got the agenda. All right,
Lucy was there.
okay,
Jean-Jacques was there.
okay, so
JJ.
we're gonna move right along, as I always do. I don't have lengthy introductions for our speakers, because they will talk about themselves a little bit. As right now, do we know if this, if Greg is on the break right now?
Yeah, it is.
I do see. No, I don't. Okay, well, we're gonna.
Hi, good evening.
There he is.
Okay, so we're gonna start with you first, all right?
Hi.
You're first.
How's
So,
everyone?
He's smiling.
they're all
He
saying
looks
they're
relaxed and happy.
out in the sunshine. So I want to start with you, Greg. First of all, I think that you know that in the room, and many members of the council spoke on your behalf several months ago at a city commission meeting. As I
Yes.
kind of remember, there were about 30 people that stood up. And I don't know how many letters were sent on your behalf. So you're very beloved by all of us. And I can say on my behalf, I thank you for helping me with whatever I had going on and getting back to me and actually telling me the truth about what was happening. So I do appreciate that, and I don't want to keep you too long, but I do want to give you, now if you recall when you started in this position, I did give you something I dug out of my own awards closet, because quite frankly,
I still have it.
money to buy you a gift, or anyone really. So
Right.
So what I did, because you worked so diligently for us, you were our champion. So
Thank you.
And for me.
I'm going to give you. It was actually won by my daughter. Don't anybody tell her. See, a lot of these, as a matter of fact, she has so many hanging on her wall in her room. And she doesn't live with us anymore. My husband actually called it the most expensive wallpaper you could ever have. But I will slap this on you probably next week when I see you in front of a lot of other people. All right?
Yes, indeed,
Yeah.
indeed. Thank you so
Okay.
much. I just want to say thank you so much to you, Mary, for always being engaged. I think it's very important what you do, because you make government and you build community. And again, I'm very grateful for being able to serve, and for all those that came that day to speak about my service. And that really sparked a lot of motivation to keep, fighting hard, and also to keep giving my best. And so thank you so much for recognizing me. I want to say that I'm very proud of the team and the leadership team that Susan is leading now. And I'm very confident that they will continue the charge, and that they will continue delivering excellence. So thank you so much. And I apologize, I could not be there. Right now, actually, at Broward Health, and I took a break. I'm with my family member. I took a break. I came to the parking lot, and I hope that I get to see you, and perhaps I can come by next Civic Association meeting and shake everyone's hand, because you all meant a lot to me, and we did together many great things.
Okay, great. And, the next meeting is after June 1st.
If you could give that to, what's that?
I can't remember, is it June 11th? I can't remember, something like that. Yeah.
June 1st.
Yeah.
I can come to the next meeting, and I'd like to
June
shake everyone's
11th.
hand if that's okay.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, June
right.
11th. I'll pass by June 11th. If you can give, is Anthony there?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm right here.
Yeah, if you could give that piece to him, I would greatly appreciate it. And that's 2 items that I get. I have another red ribbon that you gave me for an equestrian award. I hold that dearly. So these are great awards, and certainly I value those. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right, take care, everyone. We are FTL.
Yeah.
Okay, and on that, I'm about to introduce Susan Grant, who many of you are familiar with who she is. She's the interim. I'll do it later. Interim city manager. And she's graciously taken on that role. And she is right here. So Susan Grant is going to see.
Thank you for having me tonight, and I want to echo what everyone said here about Greg. I don't know that we'll ever find someone who cared as much about the city of Fort Lauderdale and worked as hard as he did. So we were really enjoyed working with him. I'm pleased that he picked Anthony and I to be his assistants, and I'm humbled by the commission's selection of me to lead the organization for the next 10, 12, 14 months, whatever it is. I guess technically, I think interim is probably a better title, but the charter, if there are any charter review people here, the charter says acting. So that's what I am, acting city manager. So as Mary said, I've been with the city a little while. I started, and I'll just tell you a little bit about me personally, because I like to know everyone's, story. So we'll kind of go there. Born in New York, my family moved to Miami when I was 7 years old. A University of Florida graduate, if there are any Gators out there. If you're not a Gator, I was married to a Seminole for 36 and a half years. So we have that mixed marriage thing going on. After college, I went to work in public accounting, and actually my first job was with an accounting firm that was called Coopers and Lybrand at the time. It's PwC now. And we were in what was the landmark bank building in downtown Fort Lauderdale. So I started my career right here in Fort Lauderdale. But the lion's share of my career was spent at the city of Coral Springs, if anyone's ever heard about that.
Yeah.
I spent 27 years there. So I was their controller, their HR director, their finance director, and then 7 years as the deputy city manager there. I retired, but really didn't do well. I mean, I got bored. So I came to work here in the city of Fort Lauderdale, started as our finance director. Greg picked Anthony and I to be assistant city managers. And then, last Tuesday, a new role, which I am super, super excited about. We made some leadership changes from the get-go. So happy to announce Laura Reese as an acting assistant city manager.
Yay!
And I know many of you are very familiar with Ben Rogers, and he is another acting city manager. So we only had 2 previously, and Anthony and I will attest, there's plenty of work to go around. So I'm happy to be able to have 3 folks on our team supporting us. So with that, I don't, like I said, today was just an introduction, letting you know that I look forward to working with everyone. I know many of you from different things, but just looking forward to that. And when I did take the job here, by the way, we moved east. So we are Fort Lauderdale residents, which is, so 3 miles from work. And, after 30 years of living in Coral Springs, which was great, we're really enjoying being east. And again, just look forward to working with everyone. So thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and then Coral Ridge. Yeah, I think we've talked about that. So I walked down 26th, and you're like right there on Bayview, right? Yes, so we're neighbors.
Here we go.
There you go.
All right.
Thanks.
All right, Susan, thank you so much. Now go home and get some
No,
rest.
I'm gonna stick around for a little while, but then I'm gonna go home and get some rest.
Okay, all right, very good.
Yes.
And you know, disappointing to you.
I'm not what?
You're not bored anymore.
No, not bored anymore.
I told
You're,
That
that's
show.
nice to see.
I was appointed interim senior executive VP of Seminole Gaming and Hard Rock International, supposed to be temporary, 2 years. 2 years, just so I mentioned that.
So we're gonna bring the city manager recruitment process to the commission at the next meeting, so.
Again, we would like the council to be involved in that, just so you know. We would like some representation from the council.
So, yeah, and just real quick, because the commission is planning on having a, I don't know, advisory committee, screening committee. So that's one of the things we're gonna be talking to them about next Tuesday, how many people they'd like and how they would like to make those selections. So, and one suggestion is, you know, obviously to have folks from
Okay, great.
neighborhood associations.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right. So, without further, everybody else good? Does everybody understand what the STP on Vanessa and Ted shirt stands for?
We were all the same 10 people.
Yeah,
What is it?
Same 10 people.
same 10 people.
We did have you on our
Is
list.
there anybody in this room that doesn't understand what that means?
Explain it.
You're allowed
We
to.
did have you, we were
Mary,
like, the other 8.
Madam President,
we were
explain
like-
it. Madam President, please explain it.
Okay, so same 10 people. Sometimes in my neighborhood, that could say SFP, same 5 people. It's usually the same 10 people attending all the meetings and doing all the work. And, you know, knowing what's going on and, you know, sending it to everybody and, you know, so that's really what that's all about. And every area has those STPs. So that's did I explain that correctly?
Yes, but Greg had mentioned at our neighbor leadership academy class that Tad and I were in the same class, that we were 2 of the STPs.
Yeah.
So these are for Greg. And then we have the,
We are FTL.
Yeah,
Oh,
they're
Mr.
all
Moore.
nice.
Nice, very nice. Hey, so, get red chair here, Phil. Red chair going in. Anybody else comes in, just hold the chair right here.
and it's just the thing too, like, how do we get more people involved? Because it's always the same 10 people at
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
of the meetings, so like, we need to increase,
Yes.
yeah.
So this is spoken by a young person. So all you young people, you're
Yeah.
don't lose faith.
She's the next 10 people. She's the NTP.
Yeah, there we
next
go.
10
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to City Hall Reimagined. I don't know how many of you have been to some of those meetings, but there's been 4, am I
5.
correct?
Yeah.
5, okay, correct. I actually recognize you now. I recognize your name. And talking about it are gonna be Laura Reese, acting assistant city manager, and Cheryl Dickey, she's the CEO of Dickey Consulting, which ran all the meetings, if I understand correctly. So please come on up here. I will get out of the way. Oh, Susan, wait, I forgot to do one thing.
Who do I get a ribbon to?
You Jack, I'm sorry.
to see.
I was just sticking on you.
Here, stick it right here.
Now, I actually won this one. This is reserve champion, so. I was second best over a 5-day.
So Mary, Madam President, you're giving what, please tell us, because a lot of people are talking. Tell us what you're doing, please.
I'm getting a ribbon too.
You do highly deserve it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Champion. Yeah, and you guys, maybe I'll get you one day. We carry it, and you do. All right, so you guys want to come to the camera next to you? We have to stay. Yeah, so yeah, you get closer. You ready? Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Marilyn Milano. I'm the chairperson of the Infrastructure Task Force. With me here tonight is also James LaBrie, who is a member, and he can't speak because of sunshine, so he's probably chomping at the bit to say something, but he's holding it back. And we're very happy to be here tonight. I asked Mary to be on the agenda. We have just completed. Oh, okay, thank you. Don't get me too close to that ribbon. We
We have just completed 5 public workshops on the Reimagining City Hall project. In August, we were asked by the city commission to take on this task as the infrastructure task force. And we have done this for the commission in several instances. We've held public workshops before on how do you want to spend your money on infrastructure and water treatment plant. And so this was, within our mission, and we were happy to undertake this. And one of the things we told the city right off the bat was, yes, we'd like to do this. This is, really the right first step, but we needed support. We needed city staff, and we needed support from a professional facilitator because we're an advisory board. We don't have any staff, so we're happy to do this, happy to work with it to make it happen. But we really needed the assistance of the city staff and the consultant. And to Greg's benefit of Greg, he was right on it. Contract was done and signed in lickety split time. I think it didn't take a month to get the consultants on board. And that was good because now we started in December of last year. And we've been holding meetings now, and we see some familiar faces, people who have come to those meetings. What we're going to show you tonight is the result of the public engagement process. This is the result of who came, what they said, what they told us they were interested in, and who answered the surveys, came to the meetings, et cetera, et cetera. There's math involved, so don't be upset. There's a little math involved. But what this is doing is it's informing the members of the infrastructure task force as we prepare our recommendations for the city commission. We are having another meeting to work on that on May 20th. We hold a special meeting to put all of this together. And we have another meeting on June 1st to finalize our recommendations. And then on June 4th, we are going to the commission with our recommendations. Now you would think that that's the end. That's really not the end. That's sort of the beginning.
Yeah.
This is the beginning to get everybody's juices flowing and thinking about what it is that a new city hall should be. The past is not prologue. What you did in the old city hall is it's definitely not what you're going to be doing in the new city hall. And so we are hopeful that we get this process started, and then we're going around, we're making presentations. We were at the DDA last week. We're going to another group of business representatives. We're here tonight to talk with you all. And after we make our recommendations, we're going to be following through with the commission to continue this talk. Now we have a 5-year time horizon on the new city. Okay, there's a placeholder in the city's CIP, $200 million for a new city hall within the 5-year CIP plan. So this is not going to happen tomorrow, but the sooner the better. And we all know, as we've been watching prices escalate and projects going over budget because they take so long, sooner is better than later. So with that sort of background, I turn it over to the capable hands of Laura Reese and Cheryl.
Thank you, Marilyn. So I like the comment about same time people because all of you have been at these workshops. So I feel like I'm a little bit reaching to the fire. I know a lot of you have been part of it, and thank you for being a part of the workshops. I believe Dennis wins the award for being at all of the workshops. He was always like the first one there, smiling face, helping to set up the donuts, all of the things. So yeah, so thank you to everyone who's participated. I don't have a clicker, so I'm going to be telling Andres when to advance the slides. We put together like a high level overview if you're interested in the presentation. That's part of the packet as well. So slide please. Slide please. So today we're just going to give you an overview of what we've done and what we heard back from the community and from employees. How did we get here? I think everybody probably knows, but in April we had a big flood and it rendered City Hall damaged and we couldn't go back. So right now we have city staff in a lot of rented space, primarily downtown, but some in the northern part of the city as well. So we're renting space and trying to figure out what's next for a permanent. So we were asked by the commission in coordination with ITF to hold some public workshops to figure out what the community wanted in a new city hall. It's probably the one time in our lifetime that we'll be able to do that. So we've had fun with the ITF in designing ways to get public input. And next slide, please. And we've done that in coordination with this group. So the Infrastructure Task Force is the public advisory board that's been guiding the process for every public meeting we have. We have 1 or 2 sessions with the Infrastructure Task Force. They're working with us to develop surveys that go out to the community. They're working to design what the facilitated session looks like. Dickey Consulting, they're our facilitators and public outreach contractor. She's gonna say more later. She's really been involved in all of those meetings as well. And her team come in and do the facilitated sessions to make sure that they're appropriately engaging the public and getting that input. The American Institute of Architects has partnered with Dickey Consulting. That makes sure that we're getting the correct conceptual design elements. The students have been involved, helping to facilitate some of the sessions. So we've really been appreciative of their participation as well. And from the city side, OMB, or Office of Management and Budget, got voluntold to be the effort. So it may seem like not the perfect fit, but it really was a good fit for our office to help to lead the effort. So we've partnered with everyone to kind of bring it together and partner with city staff to just, reserve the facility, put together the surveys, administer them. So I'm going to turn it over to Cheryl, who will tell you a little bit about the public input portion. Then I'll talk to you about the employee engagement and we'll wrap up.
All right, very
Thank
good.
you.
And they were superb. If we had not had them, I don't know what we would have done. Because we actually got engaged to really be a part of just hearing the public, trying to get the public to be engaged. So with the next slide, would like to just talk about the fact that there were 5 workshops. We started in December and tried to have them around the city in the different districts. And so we had them, of course, we started at the FAU downtown in their School of Architecture at their lab. And then we went on to do the introductions, and we'll go through each one of those. And then the space allocation was at the Lee, YMCA, Francis Trump in that district, and the amenities was at Holiday Park, and finance was over at the Beach Community Center, and then we went back to Holiday Park. So that's how we conducted them throughout the city. On the next slide, you'll see what we actually talked about in the first workshop. We're really just trying to deal with the general concept. The architects helped us, AIA helped us with getting some visions of different city halls. They were really international city halls, as well as some in the United States, just to kind of visually see what people were doing today with city halls. So the things that we focused in on, or actually the residents focused in on, was looking at an evolution of city hall designs. We started, quite frankly, with the history of Fort Lauderdale City Hall that we got from the Historical Society. So we still have those boards, and we gave a general concept of each year, what took place and how City Hall actually evolved into the one that, of course, got flooded. They talked about wanting to have common features, but with some modern styles, and how City Hall would be utilized. They wanted transparency, which dealt with not just transparency on how it was being dealt with in terms of the new City Hall being built, but also light, airy, and kind of the new technology being involved with the new City Hall. They wanted outdoor space so that then people would feel welcomed and at the new City Hall, and actually be able to convene and be a part of City Hall and just be around. In the next slide, we then started talking about space allocation. Of course, the main objective was to make sure that they wanted to make sure that the city staff was back together again. They wanted to see a centralized facility. As you well know, it's kind of disjointed as it is. And so we did hear from them that they wanted to make sure that the city officials and city staff were in a dedicated space. But they also wanted to make it convenient to the public. So they talked about making sure that with these multiple departments that the public would have access. And then we talked about flexible space. They wanted to make sure there was flexible space. They wanted to make sure advisory boards and some of the neighborhood groups could meet in City Hall. So they wanted to make sure we had several conference rooms so there wouldn't be any conflicts. So they talked about that. And then considering the future, looking at new technology, but also understanding that it may change in terms of how much space is needed for staff because of the new ways that people are working today. In the next slide, we moved on to amenities. So there were so many amenities. People were talking about so many different things. We did not try to discourage people from saying what they wanted. So therefore, you're going to see a lot of things up here that may seem like, you know, different things. And how can we do all of this with $200 million? So that's for the city to do. But it was a listening session, and we didn't want people to not feel like they weren't being heard. So people looked at having a campus. They wanted to have a welcoming center, if you will. They wanted to look at even kiosks, but also have a person who would welcome people. They also talked about, you're going to see affordable housing. They wanted to see the blocks kind of merged as a city hall campus facility. They wanted to make sure that it was a community resource. So there was a lot of discussion about making sure that the history of Fort Lauderdale was put in the space so that when people came in, they would understand the history of Fort Lauderdale, and it acted as an exhibit space as well. I know many of you all know that there were some pictures there, but they're talking about a larger area than that. They also wanted to make sure it was a collaborative space. Some people were talking about businesses being in space, so you'll see that as well. Others were talking about a welcome center actually being in the space. And then they wanted to make sure it interfaced with the public. So you saw some issues around making sure, as I indicated before, kiosks, but also a person who would welcome individuals. And then to attract youth. There was one session and one table was really focused in on the youth and making sure that they were learning their civic duty, and to try to look at encouraging youth to understand that there is a civic duty and there are actually jobs available in city government, as well as what you can do, which is what all of you all do, quite frankly, volunteering your time to be a part of civic associations. So wanted to make sure that was taking place at a higher level than it's doing now. Making it easily accessible. They talked about free parking. As you all know, of course, when you go downtown today, you do have to pay for parking. And so they were making that something that they wanted to make sure was done. And then a comfortable experience. So again, the welcoming, something that would be iconic as well. They went into issues around even transportation connected back to City Hall so that you could get to City Hall with the various transportation modes. In the next slide, we moved on to finance and procurement. Now that was really, I'm going to tell you, the city staff was excellent. They were excellent in that procurement discussion. They explained everything in detail, as well as in financing. So it was a robust discussion. There was there was a lot of discussion. There were people who understood the P3 concept, so that discussion took place at a couple of tables. But then also others wanted to make sure that local contractors were involved, meaning architects and contractors were involved here in this community and not just always looking on the outside for others. They also wanted to talk about making sure that it wasn't an issue of designing first and then having a contractor coming in to do that kind of construction, because they understood that sometimes the contractor will make changes, and it's of course higher costs when that happens because there wasn't that synergy between the design of architect and the contractor. So with that said, they wanted to be a hybrid procurement where they would look at a progressive design build and look at a hybrid procurement process. So they did talk about that. And then on the financing side, making it real clear that they wanted to have revenue generating as well as grants, and not just have the city have to pay for everything through bonds. So that was a discussion as well. In the next workshop, which was a summary, we'll do the summary after the employee feedback.
And did we just miss one?
No,
Oh, at the end, okay. All right, next slide, please. So we also want to make sure we got input from employees. So we did that in two ways. We developed a pretty lengthy survey in partnership with the ACM, city manager, and directors to make sure we're asking the questions that we need to know. So 132 people completed surveys, 132 employees. So that was a pretty good turnout. And then we had a town hall where we presented the results of the survey and had some facilitated discussions at smaller groups. And so, next slide, please. The results really were that employees really would like it to continue to be downtown. Same thing we heard from the community. So everyone agrees it should be downtown. Most employees felt pretty safe at the prior city hall, but safety was a concern for them as we designed a new city hall. One of the things they really stated is they wanted separate space for the employees versus the public coming in, so that could be separated a little bit better than what we had at the prior city hall. And more conference space. Everybody said more conference. So those were the 3 key takeaways from the city staff. Next slide. One other thing that came out of the town hall was that we have an employee wellness center. They really would like for that to also be part of the new city hall. And next slide. So the last thing I'll share with you is the community survey feedback. A lot of the data that Cheryl's just talked about is not really scientifically valid. We went out to the community, we asked people to opt into these surveys, but the city conducts an ongoing survey using Zen City, using statistically valid methods. So we do have one question we can share with you from that survey. We asked those who were selected for the survey, what would you find most important in a new city hall? And the top answer was just ease of accessibility and convenience, and having good hours. So all of the responses, well, the majority of the responses were about making it accessible to the public. So there were other, higher responses for parking, customer service, and some people said there was a need for a new facility. So, next slide, please. So I'll turn it back over to Cheryl to talk about the last wrap up.
So in the last wrap up, we needed to do some things which Marilyn called feedback, which was really trying to get people to think through what their top priority was. So we had them actually deal with, we gave them 1 red dot and 9 yellow dots. And so the yellows they could put anywhere, but the reds, we wanted them to concentrate on what was most important to them. So what you'll see on this is, and I'm going to talk about it based on the workshop themselves. So the first workshop, as I indicated, was really about overall design. And so from the public, the first 3 were architectural significance. People wanted affordable housing. You heard me talk about that whole campus look, and then natural lighting. The other is really from city staff in blue, and then the actual surveys themselves that people answered on a monthly basis, access to parking and transportation. And security really did come out as well in the public's conversation, but that's all part of what the city staff also said. In space allocation, as we indicated, really wanted to have the city official staff have dedicated space. So that came out on top. And then the community should have flexible space. That came out on top. So those are the first two pieces of information are really from the public listening sessions. The next is from the city staff of flexible conference rooms and multiple space, even though at the actual listening sessions, they wanted that as well. And then central location to meet with elected officials came from the survey that again was up monthly during the same time that we had these workshops. Amenities, what rose to the top for the public in the listening sessions would make the location easily accessible and a community resource. And then of course came the survey information. That's what's in green. People talk about nonprofit and community meeting space. And then of course, creating the campus as I indicated and interface with the public. And then again, the city staff talked about a gym, cafe, childcare, employee wellness center. And when we got to financing, what rose to the top was the mixed financing that we talked about before with the federal grants, the bonds, and revenue generating piece there to help with financing. And again, the housing procurement approach is what people wanted to see. And we sort of called it the 3Ps. And again, with the survey, maintain ownership of the land. That did come out in people's conversation, whether it was the listening session or also the survey, that clearly they wanted the city to maintain ownership of the building and the land. And so again, when it came to costs, they wanted to make sure it was a balanced cost and not just all on the city. So that was the wrap-up workshop information that we did. I think that our next steps will come from there, which.
Okay, thank you. So just to sum up, the infrastructure task force meetings are open to the public. As a matter of fact, our last several infrastructure task force meetings, we've actually had, 125, 150 views. So people have been paying attention, but not a lot of people have been paying attention. This is not like the same 10 people, this is like the same 50 people, which is not bad, but it's certainly not statistically significant. We are very hopeful that once people realize the city hall is actually coming down, once they see it's gone, and once we make these recommendations and we have meetings with the city commission, we'd probably be recommending to them that we now go into a more public meeting scenario with them, perhaps a workshop with them or a conference meeting. Once we get this material out onto the street, I think we will generate a lot more enthusiasm and excitement and perhaps more insights, although this is pretty comprehensive from the same 50 people who are, into this kind of stuff. So again, if you want to watch or actually view the infrastructure task force meetings on May 20th and June 3rd, you just go to the city's website, type in infrastructure task force, it takes you right to the webpage and it tells you, how to click on the links. You can watch it in real time or you can watch it at your leisure on YouTube. We're on YouTube, can't believe it. So, but that's your two next opportunities to see how this process is going. And then if you want to, I think you might think about coming to the June 4th meeting of the City Commission, where we will actually be talking about this, and we'll be talking about next steps. And the next steps have, this is a commission-driven process. We have done our job on June 4th. We will have done our job, and we will be making some recommendations through the commission. And then we'll have feedback from us. What do we do next? How are we gonna get more public input? How are we getting more business input? We need a lot more input from the business community as well. So again, those are your three opportunities: May 20th, June 3rd, and June 4th. And we hope you will take advantage of those opportunities. And Cheryl, do you have a copy of the wonderful booklet?
Oh,
It's going
yes,
to be
yes.
available
It's on the website.
on the website. All the information is there. As a matter of fact, kudos. I must take this opportunity to thank the staff and the consultants. They did a yeoman's job in terms of outreach. I mean, when I got the 4th email to remind people to come to the Reimagining City Hall, even I was a little annoyed. 4 times that I got, but we did everything we could, including social media and everything we could. And still we got a lot of information out, but we didn't get a lot of input in. So we're hoping that will be more generative and people will get more involved in this as it becomes more of a reality. That's how it works, unless there's an issue on the table that's, has immediate impacts, people just don't think about it and don't get involved because we all have lives to live. But this was a very good start, and we hope that you will now participate more, and then we will get even more, we will get an even better product again. Thank you. If there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer.
Let me get Barbie and then you, Rich.
Just thank you, Marilyn, and thank you very much for. Thank you. Yes, Rick.
Okay, I have 2 questions. First question is, under financing, it said revenue
Yes.
generated.
Mm-hmm.
And I wondered what is that talking about? Is it talking about renting space from at City Hall, or is it talking about some other method to generate revenue?
Well, I don't know that many people know this, but the first City Hall was in partnership with the Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber of Commerce actually and the City Hall were in the same building. So the thought was, okay, well, maybe there are some not-for-profits or business organizations that would benefit from being close to the city, and maybe we would have a building that was big enough to accommodate that. That was one of the thoughts. And as Cheryl said, we did not discourage anybody from thinking outside of the box. So it's there, it's a suggestion, and there's a lot of support for it, because I'll tell you what was the most one of the most interesting things was people did not want to spend a lot of money on a city hall. I mean, no, we have a lot of problems in the city. Every time you have a meeting, everybody wants affordable housing. Well, you talk about the water plant that people talk about affordable housing. Those are heartfelt, concerns that people have. So we let the discussion go wherever the discussion went, and that was, hope I answered your question.
Okay, and then my other question is, you said that the presentation was on the website. Are we talking about the Fort Lauderdale website? Are we talking about the council website?
No, the Fort Lauderdale has a dedicated webpage, dedicated only to Reimagine City Hall. You just go to the webpage, type in Reimagine City Hall, takes you right there.
And Rick, on our website, the council's website, there's a link there.
Is the link, okay,
Yes.
thanks.
Okay? Yes.
Yes, I wanted to know if anything was discussed about having the building LEED certified, and I'm using that.
Yes, that always comes up.
And I wondered if we have some developers in our town that we've been very generous to, would like to give back some of that. I think it should be proposed.
Well, yeah, I'm just curious, the affordable housing component that is mentioned in here, would that be something that would be possibly open for some city staff or people like that, that would have a certain level of income that's why we are invited for?
There was two thoughts on that, and again, this was generated from a free-flowing ideas, okay? Affordable housing, period. Because everybody it's a crisis and everybody, but then some people then focused on, well, it's not affordable housing for everybody. I mean, not everybody wants to live in this city hall.
Right.
But staff might want it, it might be a synergy between them, so that's.
Two employees for a short
That-
period of time. I
that's
should
it,
be
come up.
nearby to check out.
That's
Okay,
it,
okay, good.
yes. Okay,
I think that's,
thank you very much, everybody.
Thank
We'll be
you.
back.
Okay, really, I really appreciate it.
Very good.
I think two of these meetings, I don't know if any of you had a chance to go,
I need the
and
presentation.
you guys.
Well, I went to.
And it's really interesting to try to think what an office scenario for the employees would be like in 5 years. And, I remember what it was like to go to work in an office when I first started back in 1970. Yeah, but it's radically different than it is now. And I went and visited my daughter and her husband, my son-in-law's office in LA. He works for Apple TV, and you walk in the office, they all have those things on. And they're like this. Oh no! And they're walking around and they're getting their drink. I don't know how they do it. I go, does anybody talk? No, we do this. So I mean, it's interesting. I don't know how long that's gonna last, but you never know. So yeah, I don't know. 5 years from now, I should still be alive.
I hope so.
Okay, now, next we're gonna talk about the Charter Revision Board. We have Harrison Grant Williams, who sat on the board now for what, I don't know, at least a good year and a half, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, and Anthony, they're gonna talk about the changes. And Junia, yeah, we couldn't do it without Junia, that's for sure. And Jim and I have gone to, I think, the majority of the meetings, so we have a good sense of how much work, right, Jim, go into these meetings. But before we do that, I cannot forget our police, which I already forgot once, and I don't want to forget again. They just want to say hello. You guys know Sergeant Bruce?
Less than 5 minutes.
Thanks. All right.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sergeant Rich with the District 1 Community Support Unit. I know you guys got a lot going on today, so we'll be brief. But we just wanted to come in and say thank you. A couple months ago, we came in and talked to you about our Tinder Cops that were coming up, which were fundraising events for the Law Enforcement Torch Run, which raises money for the special. Not only did we have those events, they were successful in all different areas of the city. We raised a good amount of money. We had the run up A1A last month. And I'm happy to say that when you include all law enforcement agencies in the state, for sheriff's office and PDs and everything, we raised the 4th most. So we did a great job. Money, Special Olympics, it was a great event. So I just wanted to thank everybody that participated and all the community involvement that we had. Other than that, just a couple of housekeeping things. The PD did just do a changeover with all of our email addresses. Essentially, they should be the same, except it should say flpd.gov. And for the community support units for each of you to contact us, I'm gonna send our new email addresses to Mary, and that will get you your district captain, your sergeant of your specific community support unit, and the officers on that unit. So for all of your concerns that you're having in your community, it'll be a real easy way for you to share that with us so we can start working on it. Other than that, we're coming up into, we got done with spring break and we're kind of in the middle of the year before we get the holidays. So the second and third quarters are really time for us as the community support unit where we're not getting torn in a million directions. The school being out for us to help out. So please let us know anything we can do, big projects that we can help with, just let us know. And we're more than willing to assist and be a part of that. And as such, again, we're doing our best and trying to have new ways to engage the community. Everybody involved, young, old, whoever wants to come out and hang out with us and do things, we're involved too. So we would like to ask you and the members of your associations as well, if you have any ideas, we're open to them. Contact us, let us know if there's something you got. If you want to play golf kids in Oswald Park, you want us to come along, you want to go surfing, you want to do some art downtown with chalk or something like that, whatever it is you want to do. And if you have people in your community that are willing to do it, please let us know. We're always just open for new ideas and new things to do. So that's kind of one of the things we're pushing. Other than that, I know you guys are busy, so we'll keep it brief, but we just want to come in and say thank you to everybody and yeah.
I wanted to mention this National Police Week, where we honor our police officers and we also remember those in Fort Lauderdale gave their all in service to the community and across the nation. So thank you for your service to our city.
Hey guys, good. Have a good one.
Okay, they're the best, they're the best.
Be safe,
Yeah.
be safe.
Yeah,
Okay.
bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yes.
See you soon. Okay, now on to our charter revision board. So go ahead, take the floor and let me fade that from.
Hi, I'm Harrison Graham Williams. I'm Steve Glassman's appointee to the Charter Revision Board. I have been on it for about 1.5 years, so much so that my term actually expires next month. So the next meeting is actually going to be my last meeting with the Charter Revision Board, but good news, you're going to be in good hands. Steve was kind enough to appoint Michael Alvetta.
Oh, great.
District 2 on Charter Revision Board. It's a 5-member board consisting of myself, Richard Weiss, who's one of the main partners of Weiss Sirota, Jacqueline Scott, who I know is on the Zoom with us, Vice Chair Chris Ferdig, and Chair Judith Stern. And we had basically started off looking at a series of 14 sections of the charter. The charter is a tiny little document that basically fits snugly in a 3-inch binder. And from those 14 sections, there were a couple of areas of cleanup and outdated language that we wanted to address. And before I start talking about these 14 sections, I want to talk about 2 things that we discussed at length, but did not come up with recommendations to give over to the commission. The first one was almost every single member of the Charter Revision Board was of the opinion that while it's a great thing that we moved our elections to November, it would be great if we had a primary or runoff. And then we ran headfirst into the buzzsaw that is the special act that covers all of Broward's municipal elections, where we were basically told by the attorney to the supervisor of elections office, you've got 2 options. You can either have your elections in November or in March. If you would like to have primaries, they can only be in March. If you would like to not have primaries and have them in November, they can be in November. And we said, well, what about a runoff? And we were told no. What about having a general in August and having the runoff in November? No. And in spite of the fact that, again, there really was some general consensus that there should be some tweak to what we currently have, there really was this lesser of 2 evils sort of understanding that it's better to have the turnout that you get in a November cycle than to try and have everything move back to primaries in January and general elections in March with 10 to 13% turnout. The other thing that we talked about but did not come up with a recommendation to give to the commission was form of government. As we know, City of Fort Lauderdale has a commission manager form of government. where the commission is the policymaking body and the city manager, or not the city manager, is the executive. We do have locally in both Plantation and West Palm Beach what are called strong mayor forms of government, which is what we normally associate with mayors of, like, say, northeastern older cities, where the mayor is the chief executive. You effectively don't elect a policymaker, you basically elect an executive. Department heads tend to report directly to the mayor. They will usually have some sort of professional deputy mayor. The County of Miami-Dade has a similar system to this, but again, we decided that of the many different ways that you can change the relationship between the elected body and the professional execution of it, what we have is working. And we did not want to make any changes to that. But those two things we did discuss at length. And just wanted to address that because the fact that they're not here doesn't mean that they're not important. It just meant that while we only had so much time to make recommendations that could potentially meet the deadline to have some of these on the ballot in November, we wanted to make those recommendations to the commission and let them basically use their discretion to figure out what they would like to or not put on the ballot for a public referendum. So moving on to the first of these, the qualification members, forfeiture of office 303. So next slide, please. So we recommended that this needed to clarify that candidates for both mayor and city commission have to have, one, resided in the city continuously as permanent residents for at least 6 months preceding the qualification of office. This seems kind of self-explanatory. I will say that there was an extensive conversation that can only happen when you have too many lawyers at a table about permanent resident versus resident. But there was the understanding that permanent residence does reflect a level of seriousness and investment in the community that we actually do want to see in both our electeds and the city manager. Two, the electors of the city, which basically means registered to vote, at the time of qualification, the current charter basically just says you have to be 21 years of age. We think you should be registered to vote too.
Yes, that's good.
Then three, not hold any other elective office or be an officer or employee of the city at the time of filing their candidate oath of office in accordance with the section. In fact, this actually came into play. Former Commissioner Ben Sorensen was one of the Charter Revision Board members, and when he filed to run for office again, he had to resign his appointed post on this board because we kind of understand that if you are running for office, that is a sacred trust. You need to focus on that. You cannot have dual loyalties or split your time more than that. So that is the first set of recommendations that we've made based on this section alone. So you can go to the next slide. This basically is just a bit of a qualifier in what I just said. And the one thing that's kind of important on this slide is that we wanted to make sure that there was language in the charter that addressed reapportionment, re-precincting, redistricting, what ends up happening usually in the year ending in a 2 after the new census ending in a 0, where the new counts of the city population are going to result in different districts. I live in Sailboat Bend. In 2012, I voted in District 4 for City Commission. I lived in the same precinct that I lived back then and lived quite a few places in between, at Sailboat Bend. And I am in District 2. And one of the things that we realized that we needed to make sure was clear in here is if you live in your home and you have been invested in the city, and by no fault of your own, the people who designed the precinct maps decide that, okay, your neighborhood is now in your neighboring district. Well, that shouldn't disqualify you from running in that district. And we really decided that the language that's currently there is a little too strict insofar as the fact that it says that you have to have resided in that district for 6 months prior to running. Well, again, if your house changed district and you didn't move, you should be entitled to run in the district that you currently live. We felt like that was a nice little cleanup of something that might not happen often, but is not so far outside the realm of possibility that it should be accounted for in the document. Next slide, please. Judge of elections and qualification of members. So the charter really refers to the city clerk as the final officer adjudicating elections. And in practice, that is just not what happens. The canvassing board, which is made up of the supervisor of elections, member of the county commission, and a judge, have the final say in basically totaling the votes and saying who won which election. And they have rules in place for what happens if it's within 1%, you have to go to hand recount. It's not quite 1%, you have to go to manual recount. And what happens again, if there are lawsuits in between where the judicial body has to wind up creating some sort of judgment that says when an election is over. Fundamentally, though, it does not come back to the city clerk's office to have that role. We kind of thought that this is no longer something that should be in the charter. We should reflect the reality that it is the canvassing board that has that responsibility. Next slide. Designation of vice mayor. We made a couple of changes here, most of which dealt with an issue that happened when your last new commissioners were seated. I work for the county commission. That's my day job. Doesn't have anything to do with what I do in the charter revision board. But I know that we tend to elect the mayor and vice mayor because we have a rotating mayor and vice mayorship after the new electeds are sworn in. Why is this important? Well, if 2, 3 members of your elected body are about to no longer be on that elected body, well, you shouldn't be choosing the vice mayor of people that are there on the dais before the new folks are sworn in. Seems pretty non-controversial, but I do think that that was something that we really believed should be in the charter just for clarification purposes. Next slide, please. Forfeiture of office. This was basically also reflecting a reality, which is that it's not for the commission itself to police whether or not its members are qualified for office. There are plenty of things in statute that basically say that the governor has sole authority if somebody commits crime, is arrested, that they can be suspended from office or removed once they are convicted. And we wanted to, once again, reflect the fact that the charter language should be what the current practice is in existence, because again, this was something that was written probably before that was a matter of state law. But now that it is, it's weird to have language both in the charter and also, again, it suggests a self-policing function of the electeds that I don't think is a great matter of public policy. Next slide. The organization meeting, this ties back to what I was saying before about the selection of vice mayor. The organizational meeting, it needs to, again, there needs to be a time and place where that actually is the meeting in which you do have a new election of vice mayor, as well as the swearing in of any newly elected members of the board. There are 2 conflicting charter provisions currently, and we really wanted to make sure that this was prescribed as one policy that could basically apply universally from here on out. And what that is we want that organizational meeting to take place within 14 days of the certification of the election by the canvassing board, which again, normally it is. It's usually, we're having the election on the first Tuesday of the month, and it's on the 3rd. So in the 14 days, everything's kosher. But we also, again, want the language to be in there that all new members have to be seated before that reorganization actually takes place, and that at the regular meeting, that is when the reorganization will be taking place. Slide. Special meeting to seat a new member. We're recommending that this section come out because if we are making the changes that we suggested to 3.09, this is the kind of superfluous old statute, or not statute, old charter language that no longer applies and therefore should just be eliminated so that there isn't confusion as to which of the 2 sections have primacy. Moving on to the next section. So the meeting place and meetings to be available to the public. In accordance with current practice, we want to make sure that the charter says that the meetings are supposed to be the first and third Tuesday of the month, every month, with the exception that they are allowed to take a month off of vacations. And by ordinance, create a schedule where if a Tuesday happens to be a holiday or some other day that the meeting is not ideally going to be taking place on, they can move it to the Wednesday thereafter. but that this has to be advertised, that these meetings have to be open to the public. There is language in there about the fact that the meetings are supposed to take place at City Hall. I don't think I need to expand upon that. But again, we figured that it was better to have this language tightened up just to reflect both current practice and also not to create some potential conflict in the future. But otherwise, again, I think that our changes to this were fairly modest. Next slide, please. Initiative. This actually was one of the longer discussions we had, and I think we came up with something that is a little bit novel, but is more inclusive of the same 10 people that are always part of the process, but not necessarily on the elected body. That there needs to be a little bit more of a streamlining about what it requires when you, as a group of engaged citizens, want to petition the city commission to take action and they say no. So we decided that an initiative form needs to basically be standardized and created by the city attorney's office and available at the city clerk's office. So that you can say, I want to suggest the following ordinance change of the body, and I and my committee of 10 people are going to go out and collect petitions. So we decided that instead of using the strict number of 1,000, we came to the conclusion that it should be 1% of the registered voters of the city, which right now, I think that would be about 1,300. But we figured, again, it might scale with the population, but we're basically keeping that 1,000 number as our baseline while still trying to make this accessible. The issue that we didn't want to have is to see a group go out and collect 1,000+ petitions, only to be told that the thing you are collecting petitions for is not something that the city attorney's office or anyone else says that the city can, entertain. That is both a waste of your time and energy that is also really unfair to the idea of why you should be engaged this much in the process. So it should be the case that the city attorney should be able to tell you before you get your petition forms themselves, well, is the thing that you are asking people to sign for, is this something that we can bring to the city commission? And they make these changes. And again, if the answer is no, at least you get that no at the outset and not after you put in untold tens, not hundreds of hours of work into something that frankly, again, should be considered a little bit more sacrosanct. The second part of it is that if you collect the sufficient number of petitions and still the city commission decides to, of their infinite wisdom, not take that up under consideration, there is language in the charter that basically compels a referendum of the public. And that way we can make sure that if people are going through this process to demand something of their elected body, that they.
Where is that section? Where's the related section that says that?
3.15.
There are copies here on the table.
Thank you.
And it has the strike through language, which can be a little dense at times, and I apologize. Paul Begal from the city attorney's office has been very generous in trying to make this as readable as possible. But again, some of these things were decided by committee with a lot of lawyers in the room arguing on technicalities. And I think we came to some good conclusions, but this one was something that the Vice Chair Chris Fertig felt very strongly about. And frankly, again, I know that there is past experience where committees of citizens did try to use the petition effort to get action taken by the commission and felt that there were loopholes in the charter that were exploited to ignore the effort while still doing so in a way that was within the language of the existing charter. This, I think, again, streamlines the process to correct some of those things while also not making it such a low barrier that, you know, 5 people with petitions can harass the commission to do things that they're not going to do.
Can I make a suggestion for your presentation?
Yes, please.
In parentheses, on the bottom of that, after you get to 5, in parentheses,
Okay.
cite the section.
Oh, it's at the top.
Oh, it's coming out to the next one, I'm sorry, because that's so important.
No,
So
it
important.
is.
I'm sorry.
So we can move on to the next slide, and I'm gonna take questions at the end. I think I covered most of these, but I'll just hit a few points as well. Same section, same effort. The signed petitions are gonna be submitted to the supervisor of elections for verification as opposed to the city clerk. Supervisor of elections already does this function when people want to qualify for office by petition. It is the supervisor's office that verifies the signature and that people are electors within the city or wherever they are planning to run. So we wanted to make sure that that was consistent. Upon receipt of certificate issued by the supervisor of elections that the petition is sufficient, the city commission has to consider the petition. If the city commission fails to adopt the proposed initiative ordinance without any change in substance, within 45 days, fails to repeal the referred ordinance in 30 days, should submit the proposed or referred ordinance to the electors of the city. So basically, this is what I was saying before, that if the petition process is successful and the sufficient number of petitions were verified by the supervisor of elections, handed over to the city commission, and they do not take the prescribed action, charter language then mandates that there was a referendum on that. That way, again, people who are going through that process have the ability to make sure that their work is considered.
Just another question.
Sure.
The prescribed action, is the prescribed action holding a hearing and voting yes or no? Or is the prescribed action voting yes?
The prescribed action is, well, we made this broad enough to say whatever the petition itself, like the language of the
So if the
petition.
petition is, I want to change the ordinance thus and such, and they hold a hearing, and they say no. We've considered it, we held a public hearing, that was the prescribed action, and we said no.
I believe from the language that we are suggesting, in that circumstance, it would have to go to referendum.
Okay,
And if it's not airtight like that, I've got one more meeting, but you can certainly speak to the next District 2 representative. I've got receiving this.
Wondered in that same area, is there a necessity at any time to have a 1% of a district?
We thought about that, but ultimately decided it really did, and this actually, it's my second time on charter review. When I previously lived in Hollywood, I got appointed to charter review. I don't know what's wrong with me, they just keep throwing me. But we actually did, in the Hollywood charter changes we made, wanted to make sure that of the 6 districts plus 1 mayor son, that exist in Hollywood, that there needed to be an even number of signatures across the districts. I never really liked that as a requirement, because I think if you're finding 1,000 plus people who are registered to vote, who are willing to sign their name to something, and potentially it is of disproportionate significance to, say, the beach. Okay, then I don't think that it should be incumbent upon a group of volunteers to go across the city beyond hitting that number of verified petitions to begin with. I think it's just a high enough bar that I know where you're going with that, but I just don't know that it always makes as much sense, and it's not just a logistical difficulty that makes it harder and harder to even just meet that threshold to begin with. So, but again, it was brought up as a consideration. Any other questions on? Oh, sorry.
No,
Dennis.
I had a question. If you want to do the petition process, people need to realize though, there are fees involved with that. Doesn't the supervisor charge a fee?
I believe it's 10 cents per signature verification. So let's say again, you want to get to 13. Wish I knew this number off the top of my head, but I don't. So let's just say 1,300 signatures. More often than not, that you're going to at least get an overage of about 1,500 before you bring them in for verification, because somebody's going to have moved, somebody's not registered, somebody doesn't actually live in Fort Lauderdale. They say it's Fort Lauderdale, but no, that's Plantation. You should know the difference. These things happen. But that being said, the 10 cents per verification, there is also a mechanism in here where the committee that is doing the petition gathering is able to raise some funds. And we thought that those prices were fair because it does take staff time to go in and verify this. And there wasn't really much acknowledgement of that in the existing charter language. But no, that is a fair point. It would be possible. And then just to read off those last 2 points, just so I'm not leaving anything out. The vote of the electorate is held in conjunction with the city's next regular municipal election, unless the committee elects an earlier vote of the electorate, either in conjunction with the earlier available Broward County election or a mail ballot election, provided that the committee shall prepay costs of the vote of the electorate that is held earlier than the city's next regular municipal election. That sounds incredibly dense, but I'm going to explain why the language says what it says. This came back to one of those big issues where we saw a problem, but didn't feel like we had the ability to use the charter to change it. And that was, do we have our elections in November, or do we put the primacy on having primaries or runoffs and therefore have to move them back to March? The city's regular municipal elections, unless it does get changed by later revisions to the charter, will be quadrennial elections in November. And if you, the committee, would like to have a public referendum on that, it will then be on the ballot that next November, where again, the city is coming out to vote. The exception really is that the supervisor of elections, and Joe Scott spent a lot of time with us, and I got to give him a lot of credit for coming to multiple meetings and saying that as a matter of policy, his office has decided that they are not really willing to basically put in the cost of real estate and staff time to have off-cycle special elections anymore. However, because it would be fair to say universally note that if somebody wants to pay the cost to mail every elector in this case, the city of Fort Lauderdale, vote by mail ballot, they can do so. I think the cost for that, based on the number of voters that we have, is something on the order of like $200,000. Okay. I could be slightly off, but yeah, ballpark between.
It was a lot.
It's a considerable amount, but again, if this is something that a committee finds urgent and is willing to pay the cost, they can say, we are going to prepay the cost, and every single person in Fort Lauderdale is going to get a mail-in ballot with just one referendum question. This thing that was on our petition, yes or no. In which case, again, the election will have a deadline, but there is no additional cost of opening up polling places, early voting sites, or having any other kind of collection of ballots. It would just be done. And that I thought was a fair way of accommodating the fact that sometimes there are going to be things that you don't want to wait until the next 4-year election cycle to come up. And then the other option there being that, so Broward still has elections pretty much every March, but in March, even though they are not the Fort Lauderdale municipal cycle elections anymore, cities are like Coconut Creek, Lauderdale by the Sea, Hillsborough, Mile, Pembroke Pines, and a handful of others still have that March cycle election, which also usually coincides every 4 years.
What, 5 or 6 cities?
Something like that. I don't.
It's very odd. It's very odd. Yeah.
Most of them have moved to November.
November, correct.
Not all.
Because it saves the county and the taxpayers a lot of money.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and yeah, like the last 2 larger ones are Pembroke Pines and Coconut Creek. And again, no disrespect to the smaller municipalities, I don't know when Sea Range Lakes has its elections. I don't know Places has an election. But more importantly, there is that option of in March, well, our supervisor is conducting an election. And you can either elect to do that, or during the November primary, the August primary, there were again still elections where voting sites are open. And all of that staff cost can really be baked in, so the committee would have the opportunity to elect to do that, provided that whatever the additional costs were to the city were being prepaid by the committee, not being passed on to the taxpayer. I know this sounds like it's very deep in the weeds, but we were trying to come up with the most fair yet accessible process possible, given what the current restrictions are, both at the supervisor of elections level, and also making sure that, again, this is not something that's gonna be abused to just pass on costs and annoyance to the taxpayer. Because say somebody just wants to make sure that a lot of paper gets wasted doing something that is never gonna be elected to do by the city. The last one, 10, if the majority of qualified electors voting on a proposed initiative or initiative ordinance or on a referred ordinance, the difference being that initiative ordinance is something that's proposed to be done that is not currently done. Referred ordinance is, again, like a recall. You are telling them to void an existing ordinance. A vote in favor of the measure is considered adopted upon certification of the election results. And once again, this is the five of us kind of veterans of election cycles. And while this part probably hasn't happened in the city as much, we do know at the state level, we've passed quite a few constitutional amendments, and then it goes to the legislature to interpret. And frankly, we didn't think that that was fair to the citizens that are doing the initiative. We think that if the electorate passes your initiative or referendum to recall an ordinance, that is now the law, as if it was passed by the city commission, second public hearing signed. And again, no room for interpretation. Wanted to make sure that that was as reflective as possible of the wishes of the committee. And we just have a few more sections, so I'm going to go through them quickly. The city manager appointment qualifications compensation. The only change here, and this is a measure of what we did for the electeds, is that the city manager has to be a permanent resident of the city during her or his term of office. The reason I was on the not the prevailing side of this vote, but I did understand the rationale here. And the thing that really did sway my opinion after the fact was the idea that in a state of emergency, you want your city manager, who is basically going to assume some emergency powers, to be living here and not anywhere outside the city boundaries. And frankly, the board voted that that was the recommendation, and I do understand the logic, but that was the discussion that went. Next section. Okay, so this in section 8 covers a couple of different sales of property, and we decided to handle all of them, but there is more emphasis placed on public land, and clearly we're going to get to them. But in section 801, so the sale of what's considered personal property, we don't think that the charter should really dictate the minimum amount before which you have to go to a bid purpose. This could really be done by ordinance. The existing language is also probably a little outdated because the amounts of money that are cited, I can't even necessarily tell you how long ago they were put into the charter, but to have to come back and update this on a recurring basis seemed unnecessary. And Richard Weiss, who's on the Charter Revision Board, his firm is basically the city attorney for multiple cities, mostly in Dade. They also have Miramar and Weston, and at least one other here in Broward. They said that overwhelmingly these kinds of sections are no longer prescribed to charter language. This really can better be done as ordinance, and therefore can be kept up to date and in accordance with what the public body demands. The next section, the sale of public lands and public property to public bodies. This one was also important because, again, one of the things that I do at the county is we look at untold numbers of small different exchanges of parcels that are usually referred to as not being suitable for development. this is what winds up happening when there's an easement taken by FDOT and a small tenth of an acre is left over and has to be escheated back to the city or the county. Technically, this is conveyance of land, but overwhelmingly, when it is done government entity to government entity, this is being done for a public purpose, and usually these are de minimis amounts of property. And so we wanted to make sure that while we did have real concerns about protecting the public access to land in perpetuity, we didn't want to create some unnecessary barrier to these like ministerial items that come before the commission on a routine basis and are usually passed on consent, because again, we're not talking about land that you can build on. It's, you know, a quarter strip of sidewalk that used to belong to the South Florida Water Management District and now belongs to the city or vice versa. But again, all of that has to be done for a paramount public use. The word paramount was suggested again by Richard. What a paramount public purpose is can be a matter for debate, but there is case law surrounding that. And we decided that if that is the term of art that really the courts will recognize, then we're satisfied that that's a good enough threshold without, again, creating an unnecessary barrier. Next slide. Sale of real property to private persons, firms, or corporations. This is where the board really did have something that we wanted to make sure was put into the charter as a higher standard than what currently exists. Board recommends amending section 8.04 to provide that the city's sale real property to private parties be as provided by the ordinance, consistent with applicable law, and subject to adoption of a resolution and affirmative vote of at least 4 commissioners.
Yeah. That was God saying that's a good idea.
Well, the one vote that counts. And we really did go back and forth on trying to figure out what the right threshold was. Did we want this to be a unanimous vote? What other considerations had to be there? And we really came back to the idea that a supermajority vote really is the best reasonable accommodation that we can make, that public land is not being disposed of capriciously. I don't have to opine on the facts of why that needed to be in the charter, but we really felt that needed to be in the charter. Next section. Leases for more than 1 year and not for more than 50 years. Combined with what we just said about this last section about public property, we decided that we wanted to clean up the ambiguity surrounding leases and licensing agreements. Because currently the charter does say that you can only have a 50-year lease of public property to a non-public entity. I'm not going to go over the history of how that restriction has been addressed, but not necessarily in the spirit of the charter language. And so we decided that we wanted to just make this a lot more explicit and say that 50 years means 50 years. You can't stack a lease now and a lease later in one vote. You can have some sort of staggered agreement that does have renewal periods that have to come back to the commission for approval, or again, agreement with the USC. But we wanted to make sure that, given that the current charter language doesn't allow the city to enter into 99-year leases or really anything above 50, that 50 means 50, and a lease is the same as a licensing agreement, is the same as any permanent use of land where the city maintains title but not paramount use. And frankly, again, I think that we were considering a lot of possibilities there, and this was probably one of the lengthier conversations we had on the single topic, but I think we really did come to a level of consensus to say there were considerations that we might not be thinking of at the moment, but we want what's currently there in spirit to be as explicit as possible so that the city is bound by this, as seeing that that is fundamentally the purpose of your charter document. It is the constitution of the city, and therefore this is the paramount. And that is the recommendation that we're making to the commission. Is there, oh, this is again, just continue to the same item. In addition to requirement of fair market value analysis, this was one of the other requirements that we had in there. We want to make sure that if land is being tied up for that 50-year period, that if this is basically a real estate transaction, that there is fair appraisal. At the county level, we require 3 appraisals before we dispose of property of different size. And if there is a business that is coming in to use the land, but not necessarily take ownership of it, that there is an outside audit from a consultant, approved by the city commission well in advance, that says the business plan is sound and therefore the proposed return on investment to the city can be taken at face value. Not going to go into past history. Everyone is aware of it. Section 8.21. This again is where we really went to the highest degree of wanting to protect public access to public land, and that is land designated for use. Obviously, parks should be parks and should be open to the public, and really there was no disagreement about that. One of the things that we decided to put into the charter, and this wasn't always true in the past, but the city manager's office is doing a yeoman's job of making sure that all parks are now going to be zone parks. There are a couple of parcels that are outstanding, but that process should be completed relatively soon. And the city cannot dispose of land, zone parks, recreation, and open space, except as may be approved in a referendum at a special election here referring to what I was just saying about how we're basically standardizing our elections to the quadrennial in November. However, there is always that August primary that can be piggybacked on or on a March site if it's there, plus also the availability of the prepaid mail. But this one we don't need to done about the city, so that's my point. That the city not lease land, zone, parks, recreation, open space, except pursuant to a unanimous vote of the entire city commission, where we were willing to go for a supermajority with other public lands, parks, unanimous vote. That's what's required.
Lease, why didn't you include lease license, la.
I think that's the next.
It's the next one?
I think so.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, sorry, it's this slide continues on the next one. Oh, right, yeah, there is in that section right now a reference to November 10th, 2004 as one of the last times that there was an effort to make sure that all of the parks land was zone parks. Frankly, that's no longer really relevant. If it's zone parked, if it is zone parks, recreation, and open space at present, then it is covered by this. It really shouldn't be retroactive to previous tenure of the city. All right, and again, just reiterating that it's a unanimous vote that's going to be required. So on the next slide, this. Well, I know that we definitely said, maybe it's just there in the strikeout version. If you can just go back one, I thought it was going to be my apologies. But I know that we parallel the language to basically say that a lease is equivalent to a license agreement is equivalent to all of these other mechanisms. There actually was a kind of exhaustive list that Paul was able to generate. And I think what we settled on fundamentally was use agreement. And again, it was just because that was the broadest umbrella term that we can come up with that covered any way that an outside entity could have more or less permanent use of public land.
Okay.
So yeah, I hear what you're saying, and again, we did consider that, and President put it on the slide, but it is
Okay.
it is there.
Got it.
It was very tight.
If you do pick this up, the last page, when exhibit 14 has this written in, I'd say plain English, but too many lawyers touched it. So if you could go to the next slide, I think it is just the next steps. Unfortunately, next week on Tuesday, when the board is going to be meeting with the commission, I have my county commission meeting and can't attend, which grinds my gears. But it really was the best time for everybody to work together. And the idea from both the chair and the vice chair and the other members of the board is that the charter revision board wanted to make sure that some of these very high level important items where we saw deficiencies in the existing language were going to be addressed in such a way that the public might still have an opportunity to vote on them and adopt them permanently this November. However, that doesn't mean that the work of the board is done. And there really was a lot of discussion about the fact that the board really does, again, we meet the first Thursday of the month at Executive Airport, but there is a real desire to make sure that we are, say we, it's Michael and my current other board members will be out in the community more and really soliciting feedback on all of those sections of charter that either we didn't get a chance to discuss or where we similarly came up with issues that we'd like to see addressed, but are just hamstrung by the strictures of state law, recognizing that while the charter should be the supreme law of the land and the city, and preemption state, etc. And so anything that is adopted by the city commission to go onto the ballot will have to be done by June 10th, which again is why we wanted to make sure that these recommendations were being conveyed now. And whatever the city commission does choose to adopt would be then on your ballot in November for consideration. And I'd be happy to come back and discuss this more as we like.
I will promise is once it goes through some of this, there will be cliff notes. Okay, yeah, all know what that is. So. All right, I see Barbie, we're gonna just take a very few questions. Okay, go ahead.
I know there was a big debate on lease versus license. Your clarification on that?
So we decided that any use agreement needed to be treated the same as a lease. The existing charter language says that the city is limited to doing a 50-year lease. And a project that need not be named was attempting to circumvent this by basically having a license agreement for longer than 50 years. We said that we are treating all use agreements as equivalent to leases. You can't get around this by saying that it's not a lease, it's something else that just looks like a lease. If it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. A lease, a license, a use agreement have to be treated equally. 50 years is 50 years.
Yeah. We're just gonna take one question, just one more, okay?
Great presentation. Listen, I
That's,
thought there had been some discussions about lobbyists serving on advisory boards, and there was some chatter in the city about that. Where did that end up?
So that actually, I don't think there's something explicitly in the.
I don't think that came to the charter revision board, did it?
We did discuss it, but.
But free.
And Paul kind of came back with the fact that there's a difference of opinion as to like whether or not somebody is serving as an officer in their capacity as an advisory board member, and that the charter revision board, because we don't have final like we can't put something directly on the ballot, we can only give it to the commission as literally an advisory board, that none of us are officers of the city. So it is a point well taken. Not saying I disagree, but the city attorney opined and we decided to move on from debating that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. There was no case.
All right.
Just-
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
And Anthony.
And Jim and I and a couple of you, we sat through a lot of these meetings, and you think this is a lot, it should be, and you can watch them in your leisure time on YouTube.
If you are a glutton for punishment.
Yeah, that could be really something. So I think we can get through, I'm sorry, we do have an unexpected visitor. Commissioner Sturman, he's just gonna talk very briefly, very briefly, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I thank you for your work. Number two, Mary, you guys, I remember years ago when I was president of Rio Vista, this was a great body. You did a lot of work. The stuff that you deal with here always comes back to my desk on the city commission. It's very valuable. You hone in on the issues that we need to deal with and all the problems in the city. A charter review is a huge thing. We had a weird thing that came through where we had to, according to the charter, the city commission had to accept the new members after it was already certified. And in order to accept the new members, we had to have a quorum. To have a quorum, we needed 3 people, and the 3 people had already left. So we couldn't have a quorum to accept the people to make a quorum. There was no catch-22. A lot of those things were cleaned up. I'm gonna talk about something very brief, something totally different. Homeless is a big problem going on now. As everybody knows, the state of Florida just signed a new law that outlawing camping and homelessness on the streets, camping in public places such as on parks, by place of worship in residential areas. There's a problem that we discussed a couple of times in the city commission. I've spoken to staff taking the lead on some of the issues with this. It's quote illegal, but there's no place to take some of these people. We have some shelters. There's somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,500 to maybe 8,000 people living on the streets, depending on whether you're doing an estimate or a point in time. This in between 600 and quarter and 712, the number by year varies. Beds, shelter beds. So you see, there's not enough beds to accommodate everybody that is on the streets. The problem that we have is that according to the new law, we are obligated if there's a complaint made, the city has to remove a homeless person that is in front of a business or in front of a home or in front of a park. And if not, we can be sued at this particular point. We could be sued by the person and maybe the city per se. The flip side is we've had 2 lawsuits since we've been here. One, somebody that, defeating Mr. Abbott, as you know about that, was very famous. And there was another one when we had another ordinance about not being in the streets for the safety of the person that was panhandling. And the issue is we lost both of those on First Amendment rights. And even though the plaintiff might have gotten $10,000, the attorney fees were hundreds of thousands of dollars. So the city's in a bind. On the one hand, after October 1st, if we get a complaint, we have to respond. If we don't respond, we could be sued. Number 2, if we do respond, we could be sued by the person because by law we cannot. It wasn't illegal to be homeless in the past. So now the question is, and it was proposed maybe that we should go ahead and arrest everybody that's homeless so we don't get sued, and there's not enough beds in the jail. A couple terms. One, a county does not have what's called a low barrier shelter. And what I mean by that is there are a lot of shelter beds, but there's there's 3 classes of homeless. There's the easy ones, the one through rapid rehousing. Those are people who've lost their job, who have an illness that caused them to have some financial issues that are motivated. Then you have the other ones. There's people that have mental illness, drug abuse, alcohol. And then you have criminals, including people that might have registered sex offenders. Most of the shelters will not accept people that either have a criminal record, sex offenders, or people that do not want to have drug tested. Now, the problem you have is if you remove everybody that can go to a shelter, you're left by default with nothing but criminals and drug addicts on the street because they do exist. The question is what do you do with them? So I was tasked about 6 months ago to work with Broward Health, who's very motivated to solve this problem because we have patients that are in the hospital. When they're ready to go home, they might have an open wound or antibiotic. I promise, minute and a half, not be done. They might have an open wound and antibiotic, and they don't need to be in the hospital just to have that wound changed every day. And they're taking up a bed. And if sometimes you go to the hospital, there's no room in the inn, so to speak. So what we do need to have a low barrier shelter. We need to take care of the people. It's like a safety net. And one of the proposals was repurposing the stockade. That's been talked about for years. I started to build a coalition. Broward Health is on board with what we're doing. I've spoken to a few county commissioners on board. We're expanding this. I've had 3 school board members want to be part of this. Marine community I've spoken to, business community. We're going to be going ahead Tomorrow, I'm gonna be speaking with staff, Anthony and our attorney, that can start to interpret this. We're gonna be expanding our support, whether it be a intake center, whether it's services, whether it be in a medical facility or a place that people are housed. We have to deal with the people that are low barrier in order to comply by the law and to give these people the services they need. The question I'm gonna have for you, one quick question. Do you want, if the council wants to take a stand on a low barrier shelter or repurposing the stockade, I'd like to get your feedback on that. The city as a whole has, in resolution, supported the idea of repurposing stockade. It's had come up several times, over and over again. We've done it and officially have taken a stand, but the more support I can get for doing something of this nature, the better it will be. Dennis.
I thought the law said that this has to move annually, that it's only for a year, that it has to go someplace else.
I mean, the people that, well, as of October, we have to, we could start getting sued on a regular basis. Every time somebody calls that says, listen, we're not removing a homeless person in front of their place of business, each one of these people sue the city, we have to have some place to take them. Legally, we can't remove them. It's a.
Right, but what I'm saying, the shelter could only be it for
Well,
1 year. That's from the way I.
Okay.
The particular stuff, but we can work the particulars out on a later date. I just want to open it up for discussion. Mary will take it to the next.
Well,
level.
we're gonna have.
This is agenda item, Mary.
This,
We're not
sorry.
gonna have this done.
But I just wanted to say thank you.
this is a huge issue. And we have to thank our governor and our representatives in
This-
Tallahassee for forcing this on us.
You know, you have
Right.
questions and people have questions,
Right,
but
Jim.
it's late, it's late. So taking what he's saying, it might be something we discuss at the next meeting,
Yes.
okay? It might be something. But thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you so much, guys.
Appreciate everybody thinking about this. Okay, so, oh, see, people are leaving. Yeah, I understand that. Okay, quickly, take a look at the agenda, under council business. Any nominations for recording secretary? Okay, I don't see any, so what this means is Mary's gonna put names in a hat and I'm gonna pull.
May I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
I just bought a piece of technology called a plout. Have
A
you ever
what?
heard a plout?
Ouch.
It's a plout, PLAUD. It's a recording device. You put it on your phone, put it on the phone. Costs $150. You put the phone on the table. You hit record. It records everything.
Well,
Wait,
the whole
wait, wait,
meeting's
wait. No, it records, and then after it transcribes it and gives you a transcription, it uses AI to give you a summary of the meeting.
Spell that thing again?
PLAUD, and it puts it in language, people language. It organizes it, it says what the resolutions were, who said what, you know, so you might wanna, in an interim, as an interim thing.
Yeah, because
it's a-
poor Dennis.
Yeah, no, Dennis, I'll bring it to the next meeting, I'll
All
give
right,
it
I'm
to you,
gonna look
and I'll
into it.
send it to you.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna look into it.
just as an interim, because.
It's not a
better to have
popular
people-
job, so, yeah, I
Mary?
can look into it. So thank you for telling me about that.
Mary? I'd like, Jim, I'm gonna nominate your name as recording secretary. Would you like to take?
I don't think he wants to do, he's already like overloaded with stuff.
Thank you.
I know, cause I tried
Have
to
to
do
do
something else.
Good try, good try.
This job, that job. And he would be so good, but he's doing other things. But thank you, Marilyn.
Yeah.
And we might have somebody, I just don't know for sure. The sponsorship program is alive. You can go on and be a sponsor. We haven't marketed it yet. I need to sit down with my man, Michael. We need to go over it. Susie Bernstein, who I know is on Zoom, came up with a really good looking page. I just haven't had a chance to really look at it and look at the information on it. We're gonna start marketing it. I'm gonna be a sponsor, so I'll be the guinea pig. The first guinea pig, just to see how well it works. I meant to do that before this meeting, but it didn't happen. So go ahead and take a look at the website. It's out there. And you know, I don't think it's gonna be too hard. And if you know anybody that's interested, yes, Michael, let me know.
I like, just like this, you just mentioned a name and I'd like to give her kudos because this
Susie.
meeting is being recorded. It's to Susie. If anyone has seen
latest social media that's being presented of the council
Yeah,
on Instagram.
it's
Fantastic.
terrific. Yeah, she's doing, Susie, I hope you can hear us. You're still on,
Congratulations.
Yeah.
but,
I'm watching.
yeah,
Oh, good.
terrific job. And I'll talk to you.
We appreciate it.
All right, I'll talk to you in the next couple of days about what you put together. It looked good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you so much. Good to see you.
Thank you, Anthony.
Okay, and that is actually the next thing I was gonna talk about, the Instagram page. Please look at it. It's really super. If you have anything you wanna put on it, you can let Susie know, or let me know, and I'll let Susie know. All right? But I'm hearing from a lot of people that they really like it.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're getting modern. Okay. The next thing are the rules changes for the parks. I think I talked about this a little bit last time. How many of you have seen the proposed rules changes by the Parks, Rec and Beach Advisory Board? I know you have. I think it was on that thumb drive, the rule changes. I just want you to be aware of them, because some people don't really get that. You know, one of the big changes is dogs allowed at all city parks.
Really?
There are rules that go along with the dogs being allowed in all city parks. It's not just free for all of dogs. There are some neighborhoods and some places, Maryland brought one up, and a couple other places where they're like, this isn't appropriate for our park or our neighborhood, or, you know, whatever the reason. What I'm gonna suggest, and I'm not gonna have a chance, there's no Parks Rec and Beach Advisory Board meeting before this is proposed to the city commission, is that if a neighborhood doesn't want to have a particular park or parks in their neighborhood, I mean, you might not want to, or there might be some, I don't know every park, but I know most of them. They can go to their district commissioner and explain why, and I don't know if it should be the 30% of the people who live in the neighborhood don't want dogs in that park, and they can get them, you know, signed up, and we get it verified without it being a huge project. Then fine, no dogs in that park. Like
Yeah, Vanessa made a very good suggestion about that. It's
Yeah.
either opt-in, or opt-out. I
Yeah.
prefer opt-in, not
Yeah.
opt-out.
So I say,
I think
so anyway, I just want you guys to be aware of it, because it's gonna be not the next city commission meeting, but the one after. If you can't tell,
Proposals.
huh?
These are just proposals.
Yeah, can you scoot it down to where I think it should be red. Yeah, right there, right there. So, okay, because I can't see now. Dogs are permitted in parks on a 6-foot leash under the control of responsible adult. That's kind of a key word. However, it is strictly prohibited to bring dogs or any pets on or into any athletic field, playground, or water splash pad, swimming areas, or any body of water unless permitted by law for service animals. Dogs are only allowed to be off leash in designated fenced in dog areas. Dog owners are responsible for cleaning up and disposing of any waste created by their dogs. So I would like to be able to walk out the door of my house, walk 5 minutes to my park, and be able to walk my dog. Just like I can walk them in New York, LA, Chicago, Cleveland, and Denver. So that's me, but they're not every park, maybe their neighborhood is like me. So be aware of this. It's going to be brought up. And if you're, have any strong feelings about it, write to the commission or your commissioner. I know that several neighborhoods have done that. Mine just did it. Tarpon River did it. Downtown did it.
Riverside.
Yeah, several.
Riverside.
Yeah. And some have written that they don't want any dogs in their park at all. Yeah. Well, they're talking about putting those in the parks. But I mean, if you look at most dog owners are walking with those on the leash.
Yeah.
So.
Are these like somewhere going?
Well, the garbage can. Garbage can. All parks have garbage. I know in my park, I know right where they are. And I can guarantee you today, several hundred people in a city walk their dogs in city parks, not knowing they weren't allowed to.
Yeah.
With no rules. So that's my spiel on that.
I think in, what is it, June 18th? Is the commission, but it's going to conference, right? Not the regular meeting, so
Correct.
there's not a vote on
Well, that's true.
the 18th.
Yeah. That's, yeah, you're right, it is. What I say, the regular meeting?
No, I'm just saying, I mean, it's going to come up in the next couple
It
meetings,
was supposed
but
to be
it's
last week, but it got tabled.
yes, so now it's going to conference, so it's not like we have to make a decision or vote
Right.
now.
I think
I
people
mean,
be aware of it, because I don't really.
absolutely, yeah.
They always know that there's what goes with this.
And there's, yeah, it's just saying like, let dogs all parks, but that's not.
I mean, when I ask people in other cities, it's friends and stuff, they're like, of course you can walk dogs in the park, why can't you
Yeah.
there? I go, I don't know. Yes.
It came up at the cemetery board too, because cemeteries are basically classified as parks and but we have our own rules and regulations that don't permit dogs.
All right, that would never occur to me to walk my dog. I know, that's actually pretty nice.
Up to Harbordale.
Yeah. I'm not really scared of cemeteries, but still, it seems wrong.
All right.
I'm sorry, I don't know if Melinda's still on the call. Are you, Melinda? Oh, that can go down now that we're done with that. No,
I think
she's
she
not.
went to
I
Junior
didn't
League.
get the report from her on the membership report in time to really look at it. Melinda,
She's there.
Yeah,
there
she is.
yeah.
Go ahead, Melinda.
Great.
Okay,
Hello?
go ahead. Yes, go.
So treasurer's report, I'm actually driving right now, unfortunately. So I can't.
No, thank you very much. No.
No, but sorry, I can actually speak though. So I don't have, you guys have the report. It just did the general breakdown between PayPal and Truist. And what I would say, and I have this very well from memory, is since the last membership meeting, we've had 7 associations renewed by PayPal. We've had an 8th association renewed by check. And so that's a total of 8. So we still have some work to do. I think there's about 22 more that we need to renew. And we've had 1 check cashed by Gatman that was for about $229.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Melinda. Thank you.
Sure.
Before she gives out.
Okay.
That she's.
All right, next, the audit committee, James LaBrie and Jim Kincannon, they're right here. And actually, if you can put the audit up there.
That's very good. I'll do that. Yeah.
Okay.
It's I'll put you on it.
Yeah,
we're good. No, I.
Okay, here we go. So Jim and I are the audit committee. Jim's the chair, I'm the member. And we did this audit by reviewing the Council of Fort Lauderdale Civic Association's Truist bank statements and the PayPal account for the fiscal period of April 1st, 2023 to March 31, 2024, for any transaction corresponding to the council's business. Truist account, the beginning balance of 4/1/2023 was $6,943.33. Total deposits for the year, $1,834.71. Total expenses, $6,313.57. The ending balance of March 31st, 2024 was $2,464.47. Some of the major expense categories, if you're interested, the web hosting service provider, $981. Our district social events were $22.93. Insurance cost $1,004, and media, sound, technical support, $750. So those are like the big ticket items. On the PayPal account, beginning balance of 4/1/2023 was $2,343.67. Credits, which are dues paid in, $1,720.36. Debits or transfer to the Truist, $1,597.47. And of that, it's not listed here, but $1,534.71 was from the PayPal account to the Truist account. And the ending balance for the year ending 3/31/2024, $2,466.56. We reviewed all of the disbursements, all the transactions, and the receipts for any of the invoices or expenses are on file with the treasurer. And that's our committee report.
Okay. Is there any questions about the audit? How about online?
Hearing none.
None.
Do we
Now
need a
we can vote on
resolution?
this.
I make a resolution that we accept the audit report.
A motion by, yeah, motion's been made by Marilyn, and I need a second.
Second.
Seconded by Betty. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Good job, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take a good look at this
Yes.
audit. You can
Yes.
see why we need sponsors.
Yes.
We need sponsors. And we have 2 candidate forums coming up, and they're gonna cost us a little less money. Hopefully even less.
Yeah.
All right, after that, okay, that's what I just talked about, the candidate forums. We just got the minutes together tonight. None of you have been able to read them, I can imagine. Why don't we hold off, Jim and
Please.
Dennis, until next meeting to approve the meetings that came out tonight. 'Cause
Yes.
nobody had a chance to look at them.
Right.
So we're gonna defer
I'll
those
post it tonight.
until then, and you, Dennis, is furiously taking notes tonight. And that's the last time. All right, is there any old business? Okay, anything for the good of the community? Yes, Rick.
Well, I put the handout out, and I think almost all of you have it from the League of Women Voters that explains about the amendments that will be on the ballot in November. And I thought this might be something that you would want to pass on to your community, so that they can get it. They also, at the top of the handout, is the League of Women Voters site, so that they can, if you don't want to print them, you could at least give them the website so that they can go and get that information
Okay,
as well.
So I'll put that on the.
thank you. They're here, and Jim's, you're gonna put on the website.
Yeah.
Okay, and there's a couple copies here. Okay, is there anything else?
Get that in here, so I can wonder.
Yes.
So I'm here, homeless liaison, I just wanted to bring this to your attention. I
Why don't you stand so the camera can see it?
The brand new book out by the people that are part of the Strong Towns movement. I don't know if any of you know about Strong Towns, but it's like a movement to really help revitalize American cities. And he's written a book called Escaping the Housing Trap. And it's a comprehensive, I just finished reading it, it's a comprehensive analysis of how we got to the position that we're in today. And there are solutions for addressing the homeless crisis. So if you like, I mean, I've ordered a few copies, I really recommend, and I can give a free book review next month if you like.
Okay, I don't know, let's see what we have going on, but I would like to see the book, so can you just order it online?
Yeah, if you order it.
Okay.
If you want to really understand the situation, I think it's good to educate yourself for this.
Right.
All right, thank you. I honestly didn't know you were over there. Sorry. Okay, I don't think I really need a motion to end the meeting. I'm just gonna say, the meeting is over.
Adjourn. Thank you.
And
Meeting is adjourned.
I really appreciate everybody sticking through that. That's a lot of work.